1745. This didn't stop Montigny though, so this is in 1706 that they're going through. Where are we to? So the English at this time, the English up in north, they pretty much destroyed the French trade nearly completely up there, which, I don't know, depending on whose side you're on, is probably a good thing. Now, after a period of inactivity, in 1708, the French made another run at St. John's. So, I mean, they wanted it. You really got to hand it to these guys at this point, you know? And this time, they were successful. Pardon me, take a drink. They tried to advance on St. John's. They camped out by Babel's. This whole attacking St. John's by land thing is working fantastically. They tried to advance by moonlight, but they were spotted because it was too clear of a night. So they didn't have the element of surprise. Still, however, the French took Fort William in half an hour. That's like an episode of South Park where you stop to take a piss in the middle of it. Like, that's half an hour they took Fort William. So, great. And then, of course, after that, surrender soon followed. So they took Fort William, then the other fort surrenders. And this attack was led by this guy named Saint Ovid. So after this guy, Saint Ovid, successfully takes St. John's, he writes to France to be like, hey, I want to be the governor of this city. But unfortunately for him, France was like, no, you're going to burn it down and get your ass back to Placentia. They fucking, yeah, they didn't even take the city. They fucking like burned it all and everything like that. But they didn't actually stay put. They could have had it. And the French government were like, no, get back to Placentia. So they did. Poor guy, man. I can't imagine fighting that battle, being so stoked, being like, I'm going to run this city. And then your boss is like, get to Jesus back out around the bay. In 1708, the guerrilla-style fighting and pillaging between the English and French ceased. And there was calm for about, 50 years. This is kind of where we'll move through the next 50 years. But this all started in 1708 or so. So I guess that ends that kind of section for old D.W. Prowse. Then he says, moving into a more pleasant topic, such as the fishery, which we've been talking about. And he goes, moving on to more pleasant topics like the fishery, and then goes to say, which was severely destroyed, laid to waste, and crippled more or less. So that happiness was short-lived. I don't think I have really any quotes here. Oh yeah, 246. We're going back here. The French, they beat us. But there was destruction of the French fishing stages at Trepassey, St. Mary's, this is on the southern shore again, St. Lawrence, and the dismantling of the fort at St. Peter's by Captain Leake in 1702, and the abortive attempt of Graydon, the abortive attempt by Graydon on Placentia, though he was the guy that brought everybody and then fucked off last minute when he could have taken it. Fisheries on the way with France and back, and this way they've been very successful in everything other than that little issue in Placentia. We've noticed the presence of a special prize agent in St. John's. Now, however, acting upon the suggestion of some guy named Roop and others, the government determined to destroy the French fishery in La Petite Nord. So this is prefacing what I was saying about, I think I missed a spot there, but basically prefacing about the English going up and fucking with the Northern Penn. At this point, the French were hitting us hard on the Avalon Peninsula, fairly into St. John's, and then this is where, we start to bite back a little bit. Okay, caught myself up. I made a note here. There's a fun map on page 250, which is cool. Newfoundland, as far as maps go, is starting to look a little more like Newfoundland. Not great. Also, you'll notice up here it says New France. So Labrador was actually owned by the French at that time, I suppose, as part of Quebec. So on. So yeah, they had, the Great North, and Newfoundland we're still divided and split a little bit. On page 252, we bring back a character I briefly mentioned named Reverend John Jackson. As we was talking about, one of the first reverends to be sent over to the island. Apparently Jackson used to get really annoyed with our new commander and governor, this guy named Major Lloyd. Apparently they just used to piss each other off all the time. This guy Lloyd was a bit of a tyrant, so I'm told he was I don't know if he was cruel, but he was really severe. You know what I mean? So, Lloyd and Reverend Jackson used to butt heads, apparently. And I think Lloyd used to actually take pleasure in it. He would do it intentionally. He wasn't a religious man. So, I don't know if he, in, his power, maybe their personalities clash, whatever it was. So, we've got the governor and, the head religious figure kind of just, mushing at each other. Yeah, so Jackson, because of this, he sends in a formal... I know I just switched gears big time. So Reverend Jackson sets in a formal complaint against the governor at the time with over like a dozen claims. And to be fair, like I said, apparently Lloyd was a bit of an arsehole, so these claims were probably real. But some of them include, and I've circled a couple here, secondly, ruined families by his tyranny, beat one Adams, a planter, so that the poor man is incapable of getting bread for his numerous family. Thirdly, caused Mr. James Banger to be imprisoned for not paying a debt of $50. Another man owed him, and although Banger paid it, got him kept in prison till the season was passed in order to ruin him, just for love of the game. Fifthly, in taking farewell, demanded hands of inhabitants to testimony of good behavior on his part. Lie for me. Give me a letter of recommendation that I definitely don't deserve. But the refusers he threatened to murder and beat. He drew his sword upon some and pulled them out of their beds, so he was pretty adamant about that letter of recommendation. Good thing I got another beer. Eighthly, so I jumped from 5 to 8, he was so greedy of getting money, he neglected seriously the garrison and the soldiers there. Ninth, took to live with him a woman of disreputable character, who caused the soldiers to be whipped and abused at her pleasure. So, apparently they were a fucking pair. Tenthly, a constant breaker of the Sabbath, threatening and cursing those who would attend service, going about the harbor with his fiddle to divert the people and spending the remainder of the day in the most disgraceful rioting in company. Which to me is like, okay, now you're just pulling out all the stops of dictum. You know what I mean? He's just going, interrupting the service by walking up and down the shore with a fiddle is pretty funny, if you ask me. So then there's actually affidavits backing all this up from other people, so they weren't big fans. For some reason, Lloyd just doesn't seem like that bad of it. Like, he was clearly not a great guy, but he didn't seem like treasonously bad, you know, which as far as some of the characters we met so far go is probably as good as you're gonna get. But anyway, Lloyd was such a tool that apparently he was eventually taken out of power. And then this was such the fact that he caused so much of a stir that they... So before you were the commandant and the governor at the same time. Now, after him, they actually split those two roles. I'm not entirely sure what the commandant does. I guess it's like a military commander versus the political figurehead. So they actually separate. They used to be the same. Now those are separate roles because they're like, dude, you pushed it. You pushed it too far, and now you ruined it for everybody. You can't be both anymore. So during this time, we have a bit more tightening up of how our government would work on the island. Now that we're in peace, we're not so worried about war. Things aren't quite so dire here. And in terms of what we were doing for governing and stuff, like in people, there'd be petitions. There was like fishing law, admiral's law and stuff. Remember the first guy to come into the harbor or whatever, he could be. So we're starting to do away with all that. Like for instance, New England graduated from, that type of admiral law to like small town hall meetings, like democratic, kind of everybody getting their say, fair time to talk, to eventual like a form of stable actual governmental system there. So they're that far. We're kind of like just before the town hall meeting sort of thing. We're not there with government yet, but we're starting to pull it together a little bit. How that looks and what that is, I'm not super sure, and he doesn't really get into it so much, but he was just saying like we're starting to get our shit together. So near 1710, we have a new governor on the island. His name is Collins. It's all the point I have on that. I guess he probably had a lot to do with some of the negotiations with France that went down the road. But that's all for Collins for this episode. He's the governor. Good work, Collins. You're dead now.